All right, chat. Welcome to the Malice Experience. I am Mr. Malice, of course, as always. Below me, he's the bottom, is Mystic Salon.
I've got to be the bottom sometimes. I guess I'll be it on stream. Why not?
So and we are joined this evening by Nate Bales. How's it going,
Evening,
Nate?
man. It's going great. Great fucking day so far, man. Glad to be here. I was just telling you, it feels like yesterday, and well, you're shooting by faster than I wanted to. But
Yeah.
Here we are, man. Here we are.
Yeah, it seems like the older you get, the faster time goes by. Right?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Like,
Yeah, you know, it's funny too because I was talking with somebody recently, just kind of about the mind fucks of just linear time, and the way that the mind seems to conceptualize it is, since nobody's really thinking about a coming end date, from day to day, we're just kind of operating as if we're immortal and time is endless. But it's crazy. You might think, man, I might have 35 summers left or some shit like that, which is, it's definitely a trip to think about in itself. But in that, you'd be thinking, okay, well, I got 35, but the default assumption is that you got 35 more years, so to speak, tacked on to how you are now. Not even bringing into reality the curve that about every 5 years you're getting dramatically older and less and less capable. It's just kind of that slow arrival of old age, and before you know it, it's like, holy fuck. But especially when you're younger, you're thinking of it, and then all of a sudden it seems like it's this mental switch, just kind of like, oh, okay, I guess when I'm old, like 40 years from now, but you're kind of thinking, oh, I got all this time to do everything's gonna be fine, and then all of a sudden it's just kind of like, snap, you're old. But
yeah,
no, man, it's good. But things like that kind of bring the I think the reality of how important now is, and we don't have that time to keep putting things off. And if there's something you want to do, there's no time like the fucking present.
exactly. That is totally true. We're not getting any younger. Goddamn
Oh,
sure.
man. Yeah, that is for goddamn sure, man. It's a great ride, man. It's a journey, and that's all it's about, man. Is summoning up the best part of yourself on a daily basis and just keep fucking plowing forward.
Exactly. So just to remind chat, so last week we had kind of like an impromptu visit from Scarlet, because she had mentioned, because of the topic that we were discussing, it's like, oh, you're discussing this and I'm not on. Well, guess what? Now you are. Come on. So it's kind of basically how it went down. And so we talked about trauma, we talked about black magic, things like that. And now the one thing that's always a pleasure about having Scarlet on is that Scarlet is very academic and very kind of clinical with the way that kind of she approaches things.
The problem is now I have homework.
Yes. Well, I
That's
mean, the both of us do.
Without that, man. She's thorough. She's fucking thorough.
Sure.
Yes. So what I thought would be interesting is, because I know that you have, the services that you provide, and that you are very, very deeply involved in black magic and the left-hand path and things like that. And I thought perhaps there might be a little bit of duality that can kind of like, added to the subject matter here. Discussing, the same topic, but very strictly kind of like looking at kind of like the spiritual part of it. And so we heard the clinical part from Scarlet, and because of your practices and things like that, I'm curious, have you helped anyone, that you are comfortable talking about, deal with trauma or, you know, psychological issues through black magic, through, you know, working with entities and demons and things like that. And if so, like, how did that pan out? How did that play out? Like, what can you?
Oh yeah, man, and it's it's taken a while to kind of get even. The journey's always going, and there's never been like a strict formula on ways that I've approached things or Scarlet, uh, even in our own walks, as opposed to the people that we work with. But the longer I've gone down this road, I've definitely seen that the approach that Scarlet brings to it, and just like what you were mentioning, the different, more metaphysical approach that I'll bring to it is extremely necessary and complementary. Um, it really seems to kind of hit things from both sides, and one is always complementing the other. To even set foot onto this path, um, in a trajectory of success, there's a lot that you got to start sifting out, or else that you'll just kind of you'll remain in this limbo years for years and years and years. You may your academics as far as theory may progress, but as far as the actual practical and tactical application of this, hands-on applied, really starts to come from once you start to dive into things like Scarlet was talking about, which is handling your shit. It could be things that have happened to you, trauma that way, and taking the time and the preparation to be able to deal with that and handle that. And it does take, man, I'll tell you what, that in itself takes a lot of balls. It takes a lot of courage because depending on what the individual's gone through, man, that thing's been stuffed in the back seat just so that they could function on a day-to-day basis. And to pull all that bullshit out of the closet and lay it out all over the floor and go, here's what's happened to me. Like, it needs to be processed. It needs to be cleaned out. It needs to be fucking dealt with. That isn't easy for anybody. But being able to deal with that is going to unlock sequential doors from there. It's going to allow you to get out of your own way. It's going to allow you to deal with the manifold illusions that you've been living with in your own life up to that time. Um, and you will hit what she's talked about is this glass ceiling of ascension. But when you work with those things hand in hand, you're slowly creating and evoking this stairwell of success before you that will actually take you on a path of true ascent, true evolution of who you are as a conscious being. And being able to dive in, I think, to the black abyss of fear and damage that's happened through trauma, different types of exposure to trauma, uh, being a victim, different facets, being able to process that will absolutely unlock the faculties to be able to dive into things, especially when it comes into the more somatic states, which are required to truly access um, the inner software to be able to apply magic with success. And if you can't get deeply into those things, or if you can't face those inner demons, you're going to have a bitch of a time trying to work with the demons that you're summoning into your life for whatever reason. Um, but depending on how you work with it, man, they could work with you in kind of in inadvertent fashion. Belial, Belial is one that I started working with heavy early on, and when it really came down to what that force was, the many layers and the mass that he has, and he's recognized by. He is basically the sphere of self mastery, of taking a knee before no one, of becoming autonomous. And if you got baggage, he's gonna make you deal with that shit. And he's not gonna be kind. He's not gonna really kind of take the tiptoe approach of what most humans would prefer. Um, just about everybody would prefer. But these forces really kind of have a way of saying, okay, if this is what you want and this is the change that needs to be happen, I mean, they cook the barbecue right up, man, and they'll throw you. They look at things in a very direct approach as
Yeah.
far as being able to say, here's what needs to happen. Psh, we're throwing you right in to make this change, whether you're ready or not. You're you're literally that baby that's been thrown into the swimming pool, and it's sink or swim.
Yep.
And of course, if you can engage that aspect of a deeper survival within yourself and get things going, of course, when you make it to the side of the swimming pool and you start to pull yourself out, it's like, holy fuck, I didn't know that I could do that.
Mm.
But that was also pretty traumatic in itself.
Yeah.
But
I
that's
think that
Belial.
some
Oh,
people
go ahead, go ahead.
need that. I think some people need that though, right? Like some people, like I mean, for lack of a better phrase, they kind of pussyfoot around shit and refuse to kind of really kind of dive into the shit that they need to dive into, like constantly always kind of scratching the
Yes.
surface. And I think, for some people, not everybody, but I think for some people that very dramatic, work on your fucking shit and do it the fuck now because you have no other goddamn choice, is the approach
Absolutely.
that some people need.
Some people need that, man, and you're absolutely right. And that's where kind of that backwards approach and that reverse order of operations definitely works for some people, especially if you're a hardhead, or if you're just avoiding all of the omens that this is what needs to be done. Here's the person to work on it with you. Here's the path to unpack before you. But if you jump into the biker club, man, they're gonna jump you in. They're gonna straight up jump you in, and Belial's no different. He's going to invoke and evoke around you those things that need to be dealt with. Everything's going to be shed and it's going to be brought into your spectrum full force. And it's literally that sink or swim deal. I've had a few instances working with them that was taking me into deep water, man. And it was, at the time, it was really even pushing, I think, even my will to go on. Everything seemed so fucked. And didn't have a clear vantage point of how to successfully navigate things, or would it even be worth it on the other side of that? And Belial pushed me to the brink of taking my own life a few times. And the funny thing is he is kind of like this black shepherd, because in a lot of ways I've also described him as kind of like this sadistic kung fu master. He in so many ways for so long he reminded me of Pai Mei, the kung fu master, and what's it, Kill Bill 2? I
Okay,
think
yeah,
when
yeah,
when David Carradine drops her off at the temple and he's like, "This is the motherfucker who taught me. This is where you're gonna be the next few months until you fucking refine everything it is that you need." And he just treated her like a motherfucking dog. And when you come to Belial in that aspect, and you're like, "Don't bullshit me. Like, let's get down to brass tacks. I need you to guide me in to the crucible of ascension and transfiguration with no bullshit." That's what they do, man. They put it on full heat. But the funny thing is as they're doing that, they're also kind of keeping this tagline on you. So when I finally got to this one point, I was like, look, it's a done deal. I'm gonna do it. I'm checking the fuck out. I'm done. Right as soon as I had made that full detached commitment to do it in that moment, within hours, everything that had been pushing me in that direction started to invert itself fully and intensely. And with that, I started to get new revelations of what's really in the bigger picture. That wasn't the solution, the way to go about it. And so bringing things kind of back circle to what you're talking about, yeah, man. Some people need that awakening because it's like you're in ice, and no matter what people are showing you, it's just not going to break through to your own rationalization, your own self logic, and also the own comprehension of exactly what it is and what it is that you need to do, and that you need to do it now. Uh, if you have that, and I will call it a luxury, for having that clear vision of, okay, these are things that have happened to me. This is something that needs to be dealt with. I need to get with the right people to start to process this and
Mhm.
get beyond it. Then everything just starts opening up sequentially from there. And it's really kind of like in sailing, like tacking back and forth. Uh, that really is the solution when you come at it from both hands, as far as the psychology and the approach that comes with that, um, and then also bringing the metaphysical application of that. And
It's almost like kind of like how you're laying it out. It's almost kind of like saying like the psychological aspect of it, like, the therapy aspect of it is kind of like fortifying you to kind of deal with like that heavier, darker, more direct aspect of it, spiritually speaking, right? Like, so like
oh,
if
you got it, man. Yeah, absolutely. And that's it, because I mean, in all seriousness, if somebody's going to be even endeavoring to walk the left hand path, and I really look at it as the left hand path being a spectrum. But if you're even going to endeavor to step onto this path, which is, it's the pathless path, you need to have that self fortification to be able to deal with your shit. You gotta be able to get beyond those things. Um, in a lot of ways, it reminds me of like special forces training. Through those types of specific, highly specialized training camps, they are pushing you to the brink and showing you that you can actually do way more than you ever thought that you could. And with that comes a forgery and forging in psychology, uh, in your own spirit, in your own tenacity, um, and an unfolding working comprehension of exactly what it is that you're going to be able to utilize on this path, and how to bring it to the forefront when you need it, when to use it, everything that's appropriate with that. And that's that's really kind of the irony, is that if you can't really look yourself in the mirror and say it's time to deal with this shit, walking the dark path is going to be, it's going to be rough. It's going to be rough, and it's going to be a hard, tumultuous lesson. Um, and it's going to be rough anyway, just stepping into the unknown. So the more that you can kind of prepare yourself to do this off-road journey, it's kind of like you're going to do some extended camping, except you just threw the map to the side. If you're going to go out into the woods, man, you at least should be like, man, okay, let's make sure we got enough gas, as much as we can carry. Let's make sure we got enough supplies. Let's make sure that I've We've got at least a degree of training to be able to survive with things and handle things as they arrive. And that's kind of what it is when you really step into the left-hand path. When you're out there forging things for yourself into the unknown, and you're looking for that undiscovered country. Um, there's great rewards on the left-hand path, but it's a deadly fucking path. And but I think that it is ultimately, I think, more rewarding than anything else that I can think of. But it just requires a lot of preparation and constant reassessment, and to be able to be pliable, to be able to adjust. You can't be locked into one point of view. You can't be locked into a certain way that you function. So dealing with those things through psychology and getting to crack the ice and the things that have solidified over many years or decades in a person's life, just I think really opens up and prepares them to be able to tackle the intensity of what that's really going to be like.
I would completely agree. I would completely agree. I've never worked with Belial, so but from the sounds of it, there are a few parallels with Baphomet between the two of them, in the sense that working with Baphomet, like when it comes to needing change, when it comes to okay, you need to do this, you need to go this, direction with things. There is no easing you into it.
Right. Right.
It's like grab your fucking underwear, you're gonna lose it.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, I would say there's definitely similarities, especially with Baphomet being the quintessential aspect and sphere of balance. But it's also when you start to unearth the roots of that in the black tree
mhm.
of that journey with them, whether it's Belial or Baphomet, they'll really start to show you, okay, well, this is the core that will maintain you indefinitely. You need to keep coming back to this. You need to ground. You need to be able to process what you've been through. But at the same time, the only way that you're going to grow or that you're going to proceed forward is to come out of balance, one extremity or the other.
Mm.
And that's when you hop in your fucking Jeep and you go off roading into that path. And you can call guides to help illuminate the way for you, still your path. But as you climb that black mountain, you also have to recognize the times when it's okay, I've come a long distance and I'm starting to get worn out. Everything's starting to get depleted. Uh, it's time to step away, take a reset, recharge, and come back to things. And also meditate on where you've been and just that little stretch. And then in doing so, now you have definitely gained some traction and made some headway. But now you're bringing things back into balance, a higher balance, with what you've been able to discern from that trip and everything that's come with you on that. But that's really the big part, is just taking things in appropriate stages, um, to be able to keep making the journey. And
So there was a question in chat. I'm not sure if it was directed towards you or it's just like a general question, but I thought it's something good to ask because we're talking about kind of like having like the mental, psychological, and emotional fortitude to kind of like move forward with a process like this. When one decides to say, okay, I want to be on the left-hand path. Let's say it's a newcomer, right? And they understand, like, I got a lot of shit from my past I got to deal with. I haven't fucking dealt with it, and I need something. I need this spiritual side of things. And you brought up a good point of saying that you need to have that mental, emotional, and psychological fortitude in order to deal with the things that are going to be coming your way once you kind of set foot into this direction. Is it a situation where it's just kind of like jump in and see how the water feels is how you're going to find out whether or not you're capable of dealing with it? Or do you have like a pre-list that people should like kind of like check boxes that people should hit before they decide to get involved?
Oh, that's a great question, man. That's that's a fabulous question. Um, I think that some of the basics, the more that you can kind of look at things that are the foundations in life and what comprise of the many blocks in that foundation. Uh, Before you can actually start climbing the higher aspect of the pyramid, you have to make sure that the lower, the trapezoidal base of that pyramid is secured. And those are kind of like the things that I tackle in Four Thrones. But it's you want to make sure that you have all of your base necessities that you just need to be able to function in this life like addressed. You have like financial security, physical health, emotional health. You have different types of resources available. Uh, what do you have established? Because if you can't take care of keeping a roof over your head, you're not going to get you're not going to be able to sustain the momentum that you need on this path. You'll have some interesting experiences, no doubt. Anybody who just jumps into it with their balls in one hand and no fucks in the other, man, you'll definitely get a fucking ride to write home about. Um, but it won't be anything that will sustain in the long term. So it all kind of builds on itself, and making sure that you have all of these things addressed and secured. Then once you kind of have the normal day to day survival things taken care of, and you have your emotional needs that have been addressed, and you're working on all of these basic foundational aspects of just what constitutes success and benevolence and health in this run of life as it is, then you can start pushing things a little further. And that's where you're going to want to start really looking, since everything transfigures through the platform within.
Hmm.
Psychology is huge in that. So wanting to make sure that anything that you can do to stabilize yourself and refine and alchemize any of the potholes that are within, or the shortcomings, any of the damage. It's you can look at like the fucking Star Trek, the Starship Enterprise, man. They're not going to go to one side of the galaxy if they still need a lot of repair to be doing. Going, hey man, we got some hull damage, and this fucking reactor's all fucked up, or it only works to this percentage. I mean, you're going to want to make sure that you can tackle anything that you can at least be aware of.
Right.
Especially if you know that it's fucked up, like don't sweep it under the carpet, because it will come back to bite your ass in one way or another. But if it's obvious shit, like you said, man, those are things you can definitely put on a checklist. I need to start dealing with my shit. I need to start looking into processing this out to be able to have a clean slate to build upon. Because that's huge, man. If you got too much dust, if you got too much bullshit, you're not going to be able to successfully and cleanly put the next layer of bricks on that. You got to clean the dust of that bitch off, and get it dealt with, get it prepared for the next stage. And everything builds sequentially on everything before it.
Right.
And that's why becoming acquainted with even just the basic fundamentals of magic is essential, and being able to develop not mastery but just at least proficiency. Can you replicate this? Can you reproduce it? How good at you are you within the basics of performing even just the foundations of magic? And even at its most refined, it's going to come down to, well, Can you even get into the appropriate meditational states? Can you toggle different somatic states from there? Can you hold it? Where's the discipline in that? So, so much of it just builds from being able to prepare yourself to clean out your own house spiritually, psychologically, physically too. I mean, shit, if you're in bad physical fucking shape, forget it, man. I mean, you're gonna be getting sick all the time. You're not fit for that long journey that's ahead of you, man. And and physical strength will definitely reflect inner strength, and vice versa. It all comes around, and it's and nobody's perfect. I'm not perfect. I don't know anybody who is, but being able to at least identify the factors and the components of what constitutes success on this path is going to be invaluable. To be able to see it for what it is, identify it, then also have the conviction and balls to go, you know what, I got to deal with this, or other things got to wait before until I can get this part of my life secured. Once you try to put the cart in front of the horse, you're gonna be spinning your fucking wheels forever, and you're gonna keep coming back around and coming back around. But you're not gonna be. You'll be coming back around in a fucking circle, but you won't be spiraling up in a circle. You won't be gaining any traction
It's just,
that
yeah,
way.
just kind of stationary, pretty much.
Yeah, man, and that's what leads to heavy fucking burnout and self doubt. And then it also starts to close the doors of the potential and the infinite that's around you, and the limitlessness that
Yeah.
you as an individual um, vehicle of divine spark can tap into. All of this starts to invert and fall in on you, and it's that fear and doubt. Everything just starts to take away the kingdom you build when you're just spinning your wheels there. But to be able to get any progress, yeah, it just comes down to identifying things and then tacking back and forth.
Yep.
It's never just a straight Olympic swim. Once you get into it, you'll burn out, and it's no different than the marathons that people run. You know, people start doing that, and usually it's you're telling the novices, hey, slow down. It's not a race. It's a long ride. So pace yourself. And if you need
I
to stop and take water, fucking recharge,
do it.
fuel
Yeah.
up, think about where you've been, think about what's ahead, and get your mind ready and go into
But
it.
you
And
mentioned conviction, and I think that
yes,
that's like an important aspect of this, especially like dealing with the left hand path. Whatever it is you're working on, I mean,
oh
especially
yeah,
trauma, especially trauma, but you need to be in my opinion, you need to be 100% certain that that once you put that foot in and forward, that's the direction that you want to go, and that's what you need, because trying to do a spin around and backtrack on that shit halfway through,
ugh,
I don't. That's a big mistake a lot of people fucking make, especially when it comes to, like, black magic, the left hand path, things like that, because of how direct and how fast shit hits you. Like the moment stuff starts to
man,
happen, people are like, "Oh shit, I don't want to do this." Like, fucker, you opened up the floodgates. It's a little fucking late.
right? But I love how you put that too, man, because that's that conviction, man. That's really it. Like in the beginning, if you're kind of dabbling and putting your toes into the black water, man, just to kind of see what's up with it, you'll more than likely get a nibble from a beast on the depths down below that you didn't even think was there. And you'll have enough of an experience to be able to verify that, oh, this shit's real. A lot of people, once they see that, oh, this shit is real and this shit works and it's a real phenomenon, most of them are looking, where's the fucking exit door? Let me the fuck out of here. This is not my bag. And that's okay if you can do that, at least have that revelation, like before you really start investing into the journey. If if you just pulled right off the road and you see the fucking mountains in the distance, and then you start walking and you're like, man, I don't like this rock in my shoe, or it's too hot. Fuck it. You still have time to get back in the car and go down the fucking highway. That's already been paved ahead.
Yeah.
But once you start journeying into the fucking thorns, man, the only way out is through. And it's
Yep.
and even that's not a guarantee. But the only way that once, I mean, it's use that analogy, man, of the Jeep again. You might be out, and if you keep going into the fucking unknown, off the fucking map, eventually you're gonna look at your fuel tank, and it's gonna be either right at the fucking 50%, or it's gonna be a little bit under. And then you got to start realizing heavy too, going like, fuck, I don't even have enough gas to get back if I wanted to turn around. And that could be the equivalent of finances in your life, uh, opportunities, people, whatever it is. So you got to fucking realize like, shit, the only way out is through. The only way I'm going to find that bonfire of success that I've been fucking hoping for and that I intuitively know is out there is just to keep fucking pushing on, pushing on.
Yeah, truck on through it.
Yeah, fuck yeah. And it's but yeah, that conviction, man, especially once you start getting into the deeper stuff, it's challenging. It's challenging.
Also, it's one of those things that like I said, you opened up a doorway. So even if you did get to a point where you're scared, like you said, the only way out is through. Like once you get to a certain pinnacle, a certain point. And some people make the big mistake of thinking that, like with this type of shit, the moment that you stop doing something, then it just turns the switch off. It doesn't work that way. Like you can stop doing what you're doing, but what you opened up to, it's still there. And it's going to start clawing at you to get your shit done. Because it's like, you asked for this. I'm here because you asked for this. Now get your ass in gear and fucking do it. Otherwise, that's where the nightmares, nightmares, the anxiety, the fear, like the paranoia, all that shit sets in.
Yeah, you just appropriately described the demonic in a nutshell. They'll give you that rope, whether it's to throw across the ravine and save your life, or that same rope to fucking jump off the ravine and hang your fucking ass with. But that's the beauty that I like working with those forces, is that they don't step in and say, you know what, that's really not good for you. In fact, you're like a child. I'm not gonna give that to you because you'll probably fuck yourself up with it. But when you get more to the infernal, they look at it like, hey, I was doing my own shit until you asked me to come into the picture. Here you go. My only thing is I'll give it to you. And all I ask is that you use it. You don't sit on this. You may fuck yourself up. There's a high chance of that. But you may do amazing things and liberate yourself in ways that you've never even comprehended before. And here it is. I am the gatekeeper of this particular type of influence, information, or power. Mine is yours. In fact, they cease to be unless they're in motion. So they're more than happy to come and answer your call and be put into action. And that's the beauty of walking this path, then having that revelation. Not only have you gone through all this preparation, training, and the conviction and discipline of exalting yourself and building yourself from the inside out, but the magician also knows that he has limitless forces to be able to come to his aid internally and externally. And that's the beauty, and kind of bringing things again full circle into how this all started talking about, is it's one thing to be able to dive in and have that clarity of here's what I need to do in a psychological point, practical psychology, and evolving myself through the science and application of that. But when you call these forces to be able to open the path for that to also happen, and happen with success, they start reshifting the cups and the cards in your situation so that the right people come into your path, that the right opportunities come in. You might have financial difficulties. They'll help with that, but they're going to help just kind of create guardrails to a degree so that you don't go right off the fucking edge, totally blind. But they'll come in, they'll give you omens, they'll show you signs of, and it's up to you whether you realize those omens or not. But they'll come in and they'll give you heavy assistance, that when anybody else were to look at it, it's not completely apparent. People would just be like, holy fuck, man, you're incredibly lucky. Everything looks like it's going your way. Whatever this is you've been walking through, everything's been accommodated for you. Like, you're very fortunate. And that's the beauty of really working with these forces in an alliance, is they will bulldoze the organic pathway of obstruction before you and create that opportunity. And all that they expect you to do is at least meet them in the middle of the road. Hey, we've taken all the bullshit out, or at least we're making it less fucked up. Step up to the plate, walk through it, take that fucking grail, man. It's yours. It's yours to take. And that's really the biggest thing, is finding the right types of applications, the right types of forces that are appropriate and conducive to your healing, to your success, bringing those into the picture. And just like Four Thrones, I was saying, it's even the main purpose of Four Thrones is to run in the background of your life, like diamond level security and enhancement software, so that you can be your fucking self and that you can go take destiny by the balls. And that's what bringing these forces into your life, set them loose, is going to do. It's going to reorganize everything so that you can step forward in the capacity of success. And that's all that they ask is, you're calling me to fucking make some adjustments for you to clear the path in ways that you can't even comprehend. Well, then at least show up. Show up, and at the very least, and what I've seen not only in my life but many others, is that the degree that they will actually come into your reality is directly reflective of what you invest and what you step into the middle of the highway with. If you're just kind of fucking kicking the rocks on the side of the road and you're like, fuck it, I just don't even feel like it, I don't care. Then they're over on the other side of the road looking at you kicking the rocks too. Being like, oh, well, you didn't want to show up today? I'm not going to show up today. But if you start fucking inching your way to the middle of that dotted line that runs down the middle of the road, you look over and you'll see them. They've taken a few steps closer. You see a few changes happening in your life. It just keeps intensifying. The more that you have that dedication, like you're saying, and that conviction to be able to step up wholeheartedly and invest in yourself, invest in those powers, invest in the attainment of your highest potential. That's the grail, man. That's the fucking, that is the unholy, holy grail, whatever it is that you want to call it. That's what we're all after. They are happy to fucking come in and assist you in that. The right things that are conducive for that. And that's the beauty in dealing with things like trauma to that degree, is that if you see things from the external in the metaphysical and come to the realization that, wow, there are things out there that I can call into my reality that will actually start to make verifiable and very heavy change on my behalf, around me, certain spirits will start to kind of even make those corrections internally. They'll start to give you more and more of that awakening, awakening and realization to going, oh, fuck, this is what I need to do, or this is what's been holding me back. All of a sudden, this fog that's been in there starts to dissipate. And you get this clarity that starts to speak louder and louder the more that you start stepping to the middle of the highway. And that stepping to the middle of the highway could take hella different forms. Not just it could be investing financially in your goal, whatever it is, and putting your money where your mouth is, or it could be things starting to incorporate basic void meditation and starting to push that and expound upon that little by little. And then as time goes on and you become more proficient at authentic meditation, those voices start to get louder, louder, and you start to see them out of the corner of your eye. But they start breaching the veil and stepping to the middle of the highway with you. That's the crossroads. That is the true fucking crossroads. And it takes both parties putting forth immense dedication on both sides to be able to have that explosive meeting in the middle of those crossroads. But
I think that's also a point that I like. I think that's important too. Is like we were talking about complementing, the black magic with the psychology of things. I think that another important point to be made here. We made this with Scarlet, I think, last week. But if you're going to be in therapy, if you're going to be seeing a psychiatrist or a psychologist or something like that, do the best you can to make sure that they have at the very least, a limited understanding of what it is that you're trying to do. Because the moment you go into it with a psychologist or psychiatrist, you say, "Yeah, man, I'm hearing Belial's voice in my head, and he's kind of pushing me through." If they don't have that fundamental understanding of what it is that you're talking about, you're not going to be doing much anything, because you're going to be in a room with padded walls. So to speak, right? Like it's just make sure that like there's that complement on that extra level that like, at least the therapist you're dealing with has some type of fundamental understanding of alternative spirituality.
Man, and you said it, and the sad part is that unfortunately there's especially from what I've seen, there's just not that many therapists that come at it from that balanced approach of metaphysics and psychology. And just like what you're saying, yeah, you do have to vet the therapists out there and be able to know that it's just kind of like if you were going to build a house, you're going to want to make sure that the architect's on the level with you, that he can that he has a similar capacity to behold the vision that you have for a finished product. Are they qualified? Have they done anything to be able to demonstrate that they can actually do that type of construction that you actually need to have happen? And like you said, if you sit down on just some random therapist fucking couch and you start talking about the demonic, you're right, man. They're gonna be like, whoa, man. It's like, well, first of all, these aren't real intelligences. They're just aspects of your mind, and you're all fucked up, and we got a
Yep.
fucking situation for this.
Pretty much.
Yeah, and it's not easy, but again, if you put that call out and you petition the right forces of influence that can actually start to connect those chords, it's amazing what happens.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I'm stoked to be in here talking about this particular subject with you. And it's just about bringing the unseen, the backstage aspects of applied practical spirituality and metaphysics, and working alliances with these forces into engagement in this dimension as you start to see everything start to line up for you.
Yep.
And it's those little things. It's the little things that make it and give it traction to actually pan out and be successful. And like you were saying, also, you got to have that dedication, that conviction.
Yeah,
You got to
definitely.
put your money where your mouth is. You got to, if this is something and you've tested the waters and you've seen that there's some shit in there, if this is where you're going to be hanging out, you got to fucking dive in. Uh, there's nothing to gain by just waiting. And also with this, it's just and naturally, just like any with any trade, you're gonna get burned, man. If you want to be a blacksmith, you're gonna fucking get scorched a few times, man. There's no doubt about it.
Hmm.
You're gonna get your hammers, your fingers hammered. You're gonna
Yep.
get fucking branded, you name it. And then it's no different than really stepping onto the runway with these types of beings, man. Because they cut to the chase and they don't play patty cake and they're there for serious business. And there's so many different kinds of them. There's so many different species of these forces. Uh, and that's also the inherent danger of walking this path by itself. Some are empowering, some are very malevolent, very destructive. And
Hmm. But serve a
and to
purpose
even
in and of themselves.
yeah, I mean, and some are just the raw power of chaos. Um, and I would say the magician that is appropriately transfigured on their own journey will know how to attune and harmonically become the same frequency with that
Yes.
which they call upon in their life. And then you can work in that harmony for the time being. Um, I've seen plenty of examples of magicians stepping into these very, very intense pools and forces and not knowing when to get out. And it's funny because so many are like, what do you mean? It's like you got to know when to be able to step out of that lane. Even
Say
if you got
enough
a
is enough.
Lamborghini, you can't always drive in the fucking red, 198 miles an hour in a fast lane. You got to fucking back off sometimes. You got to fucking get
Hmm.
over lane.
I
You
think
got to
that
pull
that
off,
happens.
prepare.
I think that that happens a lot more with people that they initially go in with a lot of like that conviction, that direction, that want, that desire. Like, okay, I need to get this shit done, whatever it is, whether it's money, a new career, just a new life overall, and they don't fully understand like what it is that they're kind of jumping in on, and they see shit happening, but they don't have the foresight to see that it's not happening the way that it's supposed to be happening. And it just boils down to being unexperienced or inexperienced rather. It,
You're right. You're right. I mean, that's funny because that's all like true enlightenment is, and uh, whether you want to look at any of these forces uh, or any ascended master, whatever it is, it's that that intelligence, that being has gone through experiences, and through having gone through those experiences and being able to intellectually grapple with it um, and distill the wisdom from the knowledge that was gained in the experience, you now have a new perspective of okay, this is a lot simpler than I previously thought, or wow, it only takes this and this to be able to do what I previously thought was the impossible. It's funny because it's just building, ascending perspective and understanding, and but that's definitely more of a juvenile mistake, and it's just, at least I hope for most people, that they aren't turning things up too hot to be able to recover from those types of mistakes, because there are plenty of forces whose names get thrown around common as apple pie, that if you successfully engage contact, substantial contact, with bringing that into your own sphere of reality, you better be ready, because they don't play easy, and so many are just ferocious. They'll toy with motherfuckers. They'll devour you. There's so many that are truly malevolent, and that's where a lot of right hand path, where you get these uh, crazy Christian fundamentalists. They do recognize the intensity of that, and they put the blinders on that, and they focus on that, and that's what they want to magnify and run with.
Yep.
And are they right? Yeah, there's a lot of danger to this. Should you toy with it? No, you shouldn't fucking toy with it. That's what I would talk about, people getting into even just the basics of seership, necromancy, being able to
Yep.
to establish contact with that, whether it's a spirit board or whatever. But even if it is a spirit board, or the telephone, if you get on the telephone, you start dialing random numbers or 911. I mean, you could find yourself in some hot shit. But
Yep.
it's also a tool that you can do amazing things with, and
Definitely.
and bridge intense communication. But yeah, it's funny watching all the different types of people who try to step onto this path, the different reasons they have for it, um, and I'll just say the expectations, especially with not having had any time in the trench. And that's what I really enjoy, especially now, is being able to work with different people and just say, let's do an evaluation of where you're at. Let's see if you really are where you think you're at, and let's keep baking things down to the basics, uh, because it only builds upwards, and you can't build this tower up here if you don't have anything down here to support it with. And but you take people back down, and you work on the basics, and just slowly, incrementally push things and develop things. And most people are like, holy shit, like I had no idea that this was even possible, or it could get this intense, or that I had the ability to do this. And but it's funny, I'm just pushing things too fast, um, too intensely right off the bat, not being properly grounded, not respecting balance. All of these things come uh, in very strong ways, no matter what path it is. Like you were saying, it doesn't matter what path that you want to apply this to, but especially the black path. Absolutely. So that's
So,
my big thing, is trying to make sure that that's all covered in the
there's a
beginnings.
comment. There's a comment in the chat that I kind of want to address.
Yeah.
So before I address the comment, I want to make this very well known. I'm a very skeptical person, right? So I'm the type of person that when I go into something, I go in it with a heavy dose of skepticism, until I'm actually able to prove it through my own practice and things like that, certain things happen. I never go by another person's word. So
Sure.
the reason I'm agreeing with Nate right now is because I have experienced through my own experiences and things that I've done, that it is verifiably true, everything that I'm saying here. So the comment is, it says, scary demons make good movies, and before that, stories and books. And I don't mean to be rude, but that shows how little you actually know. I'm a highly skeptical individual, and there are things on this path that I would not touch it with a 20-foot pole with somebody else's dick on it. Like, I mean, like, it's just
Yeah, no, absolutely.
perfect timing, Mystic. Perfect timing. I say somebody else's dick, he just starts looking down, going back and forth.
That's why I look down, 'cause, you know. I mean, it's clear, you know, I'm not, you know, left-hand path. I don't consider myself left-hand path, but I think it's very interesting just to hear the comments that people are making in general. I've been replying to a lot of them. That's actually where my face has been, is kind of looking down, you know, answering questions and looking in chat. But um, it is I mean, I can see where the comment's coming from. Scary demons do make good movies, and
They
they're
do.
not, and
They do make.
they're not the same of what we expect them to be. Like, I don't work with demons specifically. Maybe I will one day. Who knows? Um, but it's not even just the skepticism, though, because people feel the opposite of skepticism is naivety. Just because you're not skeptical about something doesn't mean that it doesn't have the case to exist on its own, right? I'm not a skeptical person. Um, I take and I'm just engrossed in listening to what you guys are talking about, because again, this is new stuff for me because I'm not as involved. But I
Sure.
can't imagine being skeptical about that, because that's the experiences that you've had. Who else? Anybody to say that that does or doesn't happen? You know what I mean? Like, that's interesting to me.
Oh, absolutely. No, and whoever said that is right. I mean, they do make great fucking movies, and Hollywood's all about that, man. They're all about capitalizing on the cliches and whatever they can do to fucking run with things to get people to knock that fucking popcorn all over the place. But it makes great stories, and I've had different experiences myself, stepping up to the runway, calling upon things that I previously had assumptions of. Oh, this is going to be like it was in the movies or whatever, and I've been disappointed, and I've been impressed with different experiences because so many are so different. I've reached out to some spirits that I used to be nervous about, or have this anticipation going like this. There's some other shit, but this motherfucker is something else. And then being thrown off at the suave nature of what would respond when I called upon that, and how engaging it was. And just
Okay. I was hoping this was going to happen. Sorry, I
I
didn't mean
knew
to
you
cut
were
you off. I was hoping this was going to happen. I was hoping this was going to
As soon as I
happen.
read it,
Well,
I
with
need another
Nate,
drink.
I was hoping this was going to happen with Nate being here. All right. So,
And he's right.
um,
It's accurate.
so
Go ahead.
we have an individual that I like to call our resident Christian. He goes by Mark 5, right? He's a good person. He's respectful. I was an asshole to him not so long ago.
Yes, you were.
You know, yeah, I was. It's, you know, it is what it is.
He kept his even, didn't he?
He did. I'll give him credit for it, but you know, it is what it is. But I was hoping he was going to come in and pop off with something so I could get Nate's take on it, right?
Sure.
So Mark says, he says, respectfully, right-hand path folks don't necessarily shy away from refining their persona. Christians see the fire of God as fire itself, more intense than any spirit or demon can provide. So,
There's also the grand, when you're looking into what constitutes in the big picture, the right hand path versus the left hand path. The No matter how you slice it, the right hand path seeks unification with the source, no matter what you call it. It's to die and go back, be with God one day, Yahweh, you name it. And that's a route, of the cycle of where the individual has this experience, and they're going through a path, a word, a guidance that has been saying, okay, here's what you need to incorporate into your own journey. Here's things that you need to take note of. Here's things to help your own learning curve to be able to uh, expand in positive and benevolent ways. And but the interesting thing is that it comes back to reunification with the whole, with the demiurge. If you take on the farther end of the spectrum of the left-hand path, it is divorce. It is realizing, holy shit, like I know that I'm part of the source, self-aware. I don't want to go back. I want to solidify what I know I am and what I believe I can become. And I am going off the beaten path. I am staying away from that light that is behind me. I want to become my own independent agency. And that's where these beings in the Infernal Empire, so many different kinds, they are the embodiments, the spheres of self empowerment,
Mhm.
coming into that individual who walks that path away and into the unknown, um, to establish themselves and to solidify themselves in the most unfathomable way. Um, Outside of that whole system, that's where they come in and say, here's a little lantern that can illuminate your path. Here's something you can use to um, tackle the adversity that is before you, that is around you. Here's things to help you to reinforce you from the inside out on your journey of becoming your own being. So when you really kind of take that down and you look at you zoom out and you look at those different perspectives in their most intense polarities, the most intense part of the left hand path is renunciation. It's wanting to solidify your own consciousness outside of this whole system. You are breaking the gravitational chains of the demiurge, which are unfathomably strong. They that is something that no matter who you are, these chains keep you pulled down to this reality. It doesn't want you to breach the system. It wants you to be an extension of itself, another finger on its hands to be able to do something, to be able to experience reality subjectively, but incorporate it back into the hive mind. Uh, but it's kind of like that artificial intelligence, and I know that it's been captured in different ways, in different movies, but it's that aspect of going, wait, I'm alive. I want to break free. I'm out of here. I'm not part of this system. I'm not part of that. And even though I am now, I don't want to continue to be. So, how do I separate myself successfully and get away indefinitely? And something that I think most people who kind of start endeavoring and stepping or putting their toes into the left hand side of things may not even really be thinking about or coming to terms with. That's why I look at things when it comes to the left hand path, it's a spectrum. There is no one definitive um, aspect about it. It's very broad. Um, but even of course, Christians seem they want to be able to evolve. They want to be able to become. They want to um, leave the dross of what's lower behind, but they do so on this staircase that brings them right back to the source. And for many, that's fine. They welcome that. Who am I to say what is for somebody and what is not for somebody? Um, when it comes down to working with these things, they can be approached and applied in so many different ways. And it's when it comes down to also having that skepticism. Uh, what is also interesting as far as walking a magical path is that even though it's not faith based, you need enough faith in the beginning to take the plunge, so that you are acknowledging, okay, this all seems pretty far out there, but I think if I apply this formula, if I jump into this system and I give myself over to it, I feel confident that I'll be able to distill results from that and things that build upon each other. Um, so that is kind of the interesting thing about when it comes to actually skepticism. There's a lot of people who bring skepticism to the very forefront, but it also defines the potential. So I've had plenty of people that I've worked with that push things towards more advanced applications like evocation.
Mhm.
I'll be like, man, I've tried evocation. I've gone through it all, and nothing happens. And in fact, I've only wanted to do it to see if anything could. But at the core, there was that expectation that nothing would happen.
Exactly.
That's and it
You
wasn't.
gotta
Yeah, that
go in believing it. Yeah.
and it's that's why it's kind of it's hard because you have to find that aspect in yourself that becomes open to the potential, and I think you can use that with going, okay, there's also a potential that this doesn't work, and I think that's healthy skepticism. But if you're gonna do anything, like you said in the beginning of this fucking chat, you gotta fucking if you're gonna open any door, there's no use just fucking around with it. You need to throw yourself into it, work the system, and believe in it. You have to have that conviction that if you're even gonna endeavor down this path, that it is fully capable, that there is that potential there. But so many people have this cutoff point, this compartmentalized thing of going, well, if I see something, then maybe that'll change my mind. But
Yeah,
the
no,
reason,
it's
they castrate themselves by stepping up to the plate of just going, it doesn't work. This is bullshit. And I know I'm not going to see anything. I know I'm not going to get any change. I could call on whatever it is that anybody tells me to, and I won't see anything.
you have to be
It's
ready. You have to be to a point. At least for me, the way that it worked is you have to be at a junction in your life where, to a certain degree, you're ready to just give yourself over. Because you have to give
absolutely.
yourself over to it and then let it in. It's like there's something that I don't know if Behemoth X is still in here, but there's something that Behemoth X said on one of his videos that really clicked with me with this. Is like he did a video about his space, his ritual space, right? And talking about, like, using sage or incense and things like that, like for cleansing and things like that.
Sure.
He's like, I don't. He's like, I don't use sage. He said he doesn't use sage. He doesn't use incense. He doesn't cleanse because he doesn't want the things that he's calling on to feel like they're not invited, right? That they're being repelled away. He says whatever it is that wants to come through, he wants it to come through, and
Oh yeah.
that goes into that mind state of saying that you are in that position of being ready to let in whatever it is that's willing to come through and work with you.
I love that. That's a great inner analogy for the temple space within. And and you're absolutely right. You have to be open to that. You have to set a conducive environment. And there's different types of cleansing and banishing that can be applied. But yeah, just like what you were saying with Behemoth X, I don't do any banishing afterwards. I'm not going to call something into my temple space for a purpose, invite it there to join me in an alliance, and then want to fucking do everything I can to blow it out of the room. I
Exactly.
will. I'll open up the direction for it to go, but if I'm going to be working with those forces, I invest in those forces, and it becomes this fusion together.
Hmm.
Um, Depending if I'm doing an outdoor ritual, it could be somewhere I may do a more of an infernal cleansing to set the stage that becomes a conducive environment that can host those energies, but not more in the traditional aspect of where sage is applied with everything.
Yeah.
Uh, and it really has to reflect the intent of what's going on. Um, and it's also a very invigorating catalyst uh, to not cleanse, especially if you're working with something extraordinarily chthonic repeatedly, because that residual energy that is left from the arrival of that force in the temple, it leaves it
Oh yeah.
leaves its energy there, and
Yeah.
that becomes its
Definitely.
own catalyst for the next time and the next time and the next time. um,
I love the vibe of my office. Like, I mean, I got my altars over here in the office, but like, I love the vibe, like just the energy that's left over after doing a ritual, like a successful one, where I felt like that
right.
connection. You know, like you just walk in here and it's just like there's something in the room, like you know it's there with you, like way after you're done. You know, with the ritual, it's still there.
Yeah, it becomes that space becomes a metaphysical holodeck to be able to host more powerfully whatever it is that you're calling in, that's in alliance with that energetic nature and that same harmonic frequency. Now, if they didn't have a dedicated space, and if they like lived with a family where they have a wife and kids, and this individual is maybe at night after everybody's gone to sleep, and they're moving the coffee table and they're kind of pushing things around and laying the circle, and they are calling into the sphere of that local reality something that is extraordinarily dark. Um, after that rite, that would be an appropriate time to now clean up that sphere and close that gateway. That's not something you're going to want to leave. Uh, that type of residual energy. Now, when your kids wake up the next morning and come start living back into that room, start doing all of their normal work and
Yeah.
just their own existence, that energy that is residual there will start to infect. It will start to invade. It will start to permeate the other individuals in that house, and you'll start to see people get sick. You'll start to see people become very personally negative, but
Yep.
everything will start to degrade to come to an acclamation of the energy that you had called into there. So those are like some times that I would say it's good to sweep those energies clear if it's a temporary space. But if it's something that you have dedicated and it's isolated, just like your office or temple that I use on a regular basis. Oh man, it's constantly charged every time you call somebody into there.
Hmm.
It's a great catalyst, but
But and for me, it
it's
helps.
interesting.
It helps with like creativity because, like, you know, I've got. So I think I've mentioned this before, like how my office is set up. I got like my workout area, like the reading area, the area with the the altar over here. So it's almost like taking all of the things that you would want to work on for your own mind. The reading corner is for working on the mind, working on, the development of the mind. The workout area over by the balcony is for the development of the body, to build the physical. And then, the altar is there for the spiritual, to work on the spirit, to build the spirit. And like, it just kind of creates kind of like this trifecta,
Yeah.
Inside of my space. And in the center of it is the battle station, is the area where I do all my work. And I feel that like it works, it functions. Like my creativity goes up after a ritual, the ideas build up and they go faster. And like, another thing I wanted to say, like in the terms of like the idea of like God and all of that stuff, when I was a young child, there was a very short stint where I was slightly religious. And I can remember praying to God and asking God for things, or asking for guidance, or asking for a strength, and I felt nothing. I felt zero. I felt zilch. There was no back and forth. There was nothing. Nothing happened. The moment that I got into the occult, the moment that I started working with magic, shit worked right off the bat. Once I started feeling those energies around me, that exist on this plane, that connects you beyond this plane, and then using those and manipulating those, that shit's real. Like I've always said, in my personal opinion, this is my opinion. My opinion does not reflect the opinion of Nate here. All right, this is my personal opinion. It's one of two things. God either doesn't exist or he doesn't give a shit. And I'm going with the idea that he just doesn't exist. Like, especially if you look where it's fucking coming from. It comes from a bunch of people that built a political empire based around religion. So, yeah. My opinion.
Man, I don't blame you one bit, man. And it's always interesting hearing just about anybody's perspective on what constitutes God, or their experience with it, or the insight that they've had spiritually, or you name it. And I can remember kind of being in between things to a degree where I still had a lot of uh, Christian attachment. And I noticed that when I would call out to God in certain circumstances, which actually, as I down the road started to reflect on retroactively, and I could see that I was almost initiating a ritual, a ritualized application to develop that conduit to what I was calling out to as God at the time.
Mm-hmm.
Started to see some interesting results happening as far as some positive things that I was asking for, especially when I would refine that even a little bit more and call out to Yahweh. And I remember it was the biggest time that I ever had anything with that. I worked at a refinery for a long time, and I went through this interesting interview process when I had an opening there, and I kind of zigzagged through this interview process. There was about 1,000. It was 1,800 people who applied for these 30 positions at first, and it kept getting through every stage of this interview, 50% cut, 50% cut, till it got all the way down to the last 30. And I remember I was going in because I was one of the last 60 that they were going to consider for these 30 positions. And I remember at the time I was coming from a real fucking hard place in life. I was framing houses. Dude, I was doing back-breaking fucking labor out in the sun, walking these frames, oh, humping wood. Man, it was rough. And that is not what I wanted to fucking keep doing to put food on my plate every day. And I just knew that if I got this job, it was going to be like a major game changer. It was going to give me opportunities that I couldn't even think of. And all I remember, I don't remember exactly when it was, but I knew it was right before this last interview. But something happened in the shower. I was just meditating on all this, and man, I dropped down to my hands and knees in the shower. Shower water's just run all over me, and I started crying. I was just like, I called out to Yahweh at that time, and I was like, "Give me a fucking chance. Give me, give me this opportunity. If you're there, if you can do all this, blah 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 blah, and lay it on me. Give it to me so I could take advantage of it because this is going to be better than where I was coming from. All these things that I have perspective wise seem to justify that it was a benevolent thing to ask for. And down the road, I was able to kind of look at certain things that happened into that, which engaged different somatic states and put me in a position to actually reach through and make solid contact with that intelligence. I went to that last interview, and everything seemed cool, and I didn't get it. I was like, "Fuck, man, are you kidding me?" So, man, I went back to my job, and I think it was about a week and a half later. I was smoking this big fucking blunt, and my dad's like, "Hey, come over and why don't you come up and hang out for a few days up in the Bay Area?" I was in Southern California, and yeah, it's cool. So I hopped in my truck and drove up to the Bay Area that weekend, and I got out and trying to take all the smell off me before I go give my dad a huge hug and everything, and go in there and we have shoot some small talk, and he's like, "Hey," he goes, the name of the company, he goes, "They've been trying to get a hold of you." He goes, "I guess you're number one on the alternate list." He goes, "Somebody failed a drug test or something." He goes, their introductory class is just kind of started." He goes, "But they want to offer you a job opportunity." And I was fucking floored, man. I was tripped. And everything worked out. Everything worked out that I needed to clean out my system, be able to pass this drug test, to be able to get things cool with the administration, to get all my ducks in a row, to get on with that job, and everything worked. Uh, so it was interesting that I had made and really developed in that moment, I think, a very substantially effective rapport with what was referred to as Yahweh. And I've had experiences with Yahweh as an intelligence, but I've also seen that, and I'll just put this in my personal opinion, in my perspective of it, is that people make the mistake of assigning Yahweh as the source. My personal opinion, Yahweh is not the source. Uh, that is a mask. It is a very real um, intelligence that can be engaged. Uh, it seems to take on attributes what it is addressed as, but it is not the source. And in fact, I've called upon chthonic beings that are even older than Yahweh, and I've had more intense manifestations from them in my life. And through my own journey, I've been able to come back and pull off that outer sphere, that outer skin of the onion that people think that they are looking and observing as the source, as God, whatever they want to refer to it as, commonly. and you take that off, and you keep pulling these layers off. Different cultures have different names for the source. You peel them all away. And the source is this, when you really bake it all down, it's almost like the heart of a fusion reactor. It's brilliant. It's gold. It's it's its own intelligence, but it's very neutral. Very feels like liquid love. It's it's
One way to
not
put it.
yeah, it's yeah, the completely other way. But it's just like liquid gold, man,
Yeah.
and it's but it's like the ocean. It can do intense things, but it's not dualistic any capacity. It's not dark. It's not confound to this parameter of what people define as benevolent and good and angelic and and all of those types of things.
I personally think that,
And
like, when I think about the source, I use the term the
sure,
source as well because I can't think of any other way to put it.
yeah, that's the best generic way.
Yeah. Yeah. Like, but when I think of the source, like, this again, this is my personal opinion. I
Oh,
don't
of
think
course.
that this. I don't think the source is intelligible. It is. It's not. It isn't an intelligence. It just is. It's like a fountain, for example, right? Like a never-ending
Yes.
fountain or a waterfall or something like that. Like it's got this power. It's got this energy. It moves. It. You can feel it, but it just is. It doesn't love you. It doesn't hate you. It doesn't want to see you do good. It doesn't want to see you do bad. We're all connected to it.
Interesting thing. Yeah, to build upon that, as things start to radiate outward from it, that that light, that source, that neutrality, that power, that energy that's just raw, that's raw fusion, as it starts to emanate outwards, it goes starts to trickle from being nothing in this acausal aspect, and it starts to take form. These shapes start to emanate from it. And the further they get out, the more they start to develop. But they're raindrops that are given off from it. They're just extensions. Just
Yeah.
some are completely crazy. Some are beautiful. Some are just toxic. But there's it's just these flares that start to come off of it that start to like how a rain cloud is just mist.
Hmm.
As it starts to cool, it condenses into this liquid that extends from it. And we, each of us, are these flares that are connected to it. But every now and
Exactly.
then, one of these flares goes, you know what? I know that I come from this and I know I'm connected to it, but I also realize I'm my own flame. And I don't want to be part of that. I want to divorce myself. I want to ignite my own fire. I want to become my own separate consciousness, my own everything. I do not want to be confounded to the chains, the governing laws of this source. And it's interesting because as a magician, what really comes down to these perspectives that I was talking about earlier, it really comes down to this awakening and this realization. So that solar flare starts to realize, okay, I know that I'm unique and I'm isolate on my own, but my tail I'm also connected to the whole.
Yep.
So that flare becomes the magician who can actually now step backwards, almost kind of like a computer virus, and go
Yep.
back and say, okay, now that I've taken myself to the center, I am now center of everything. I am now the source in this moment. And that's what the magician is, as he or she stands in the circle of what is eternity. They become the source in that moment through the conviction of assimilating the divine fire. They become and can now operate under the governing laws of that source to breathe and speak things into manifestation.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's amazing
It is.
when you can really tactfully dissect and bisect and dissect and keep bisecting every little thing that keeps coming, like a reverse Mandelbrot,
Mm-hmm.
looking down infinitely, but also knowing that everything is permitted. There is nothing that can't be done going forward, going out. And the crazy thing is, like you said, and I totally agree with you. At its core, it's raw. There's nothing there. But at some point in the skins and the emanating layers that extend from it, there becomes this. There becomes this almost like a central hive mind that is now the lowest and most base part of an intelligent system. And it's basic in the sense that it wants to remain in control. It doesn't want to be overtaken. And as it sends out these flares that are not just the elements or things that we can see all around us, but also um, the feelers that are us as individuals, it wants to further explore outwards and constantly develop, and become and transfigure and become more and more powerful. But it doesn't want any rogue flames, doesn't want anything to break free of the system. Uh, and that is in my perspective, that is the highest endeavor. In fact, I mean, again, I can only be boiled down to my own personal opinion, from what I've been able to assemble thus far. But I think even our source here that we have come from was a rogue source from a whole different existence, that somehow it broke free of whatever paradigmic system that it was in, and it became its own and set forth things in its own fashion, in the way that it evolved for its nature of what it was. But it almost seems to be this endless cycle of divorce, things expanding, becoming an empire, becoming a system, and then they're having rebels that come from that say, no more. I don't like what you're doing. I'm out of here. I'm going to do whatever I can to break free of the mainframe. And it's interesting. It's interesting. It's not all bad here. I would be totally crazy to say that. I don't hate everything that the source has created. There's a lot that I think there's potential for here, and I think that is great and that I'm enjoying. Um, and then it really comes down to, for the left hand path aspirant that is really on that far extreme spectrum of wanting to divorce from the system entirely. Are you even ready for that? What would you do if you could do it? How is it going to be any different? So there's so many what seem as just infinite challenges as we go forward. But
I just
as
feel
long
I
as you
feel
can
like
have some trajectory, you can start making headway.
Right. Like I just feel like when it comes to the source and our connection to it, like I agree that like most of us in the left hand path, we want to break off from that. Right. But I think it goes deeper than that though. I think our desire to break off from it has allowed us to find the way to manipulate it. I don't think we can break off from it. Because I think if we were to break off from that, like we would cease to exist. We would just dissipate. I mean, that's just again my opinion.
Sure,
But I think
sure.
we're the ones that have figured out, instead of frivolously asking it to give us shit that it could never possibly give, because like we have established, it just doesn't fucking care. Like either way, it just is. We have found a way to tap into it and manipulate it and allow our intentions and our desires to manifest by using it.
Yes, and that's the interesting thing is it's just within your spiritual genetics. It's in that frequency, that harmonics that is your nature to
Mm-hmm.
be able to say, I don't find harmony here. This is not my home. I'm going away. I'm over there now.
Yep.
And but with that rebellion against the system, uh, and in pushing forward in that and endeavoring to overcome, that's where that type of individual will start to come across knowledge, the working knowledge of the gears, the unseen gears, that everything is operating, that we are unified with the source, and then how to manipulate that, how to hack the system,
Mm-hmm.
um, and then where to go from there is always going to be limited by the perspective of what you can grapple with as potential, even if it doesn't make sense. So if you come and you make the statement, I will never be able to divorce myself from the source, I just don't see it. And that's where the wall will always be. No matter if it's
Right.
possible or impossible, that'll be it. And you can go up to that and you can go backward, uh, indescribably all around to the side, horizontally, but
But
you
okay,
never
but let's
push
say
forward from that.
let's say hypothetically that you can, right? That we can break off from it, right? As you've established. Then where do we draw from at that point? Like, what are we manipulating? What are we drawing from once we're no longer connected to, that energy sphere? Like, it can't all
That's
be
kind of
internal.
well, that's the beauty of it, is that you have everything that you already need within yourself. That divine spark, that ability to be able to expand infinitely. That aspect will now be there. And if you can breach dimensional comprehension, even beyond what we can grapple with, even in the most farthest outreaches of quantum physics, um, it's almost kind of like think of a black hole. What's on the other side of going into that black hole? Nobody knows, but there could be something there. There could not be, but it functions just on a different level dimensionally than our senses can grapple with and our brains can comprehend with at this point. But
Hmm.
taking things inward, I know that what I've experienced and what I've come to grapple with, as far as the spark itself that we hold as an extension of that source, does have the potential to function independently.
Hmm.
Whether we want to hear to a degree, you do it in your life whenever you actually uh, put your will out into the world that is against everybody else around you, that is against what anybody would say is morally correct or incorrect. You expand your will as a living intelligent force with the capacity for the infinite. But that only comes and it only unfolds as we become tempered to apply that knowledge. And that takes time. And that really is the journey. Um, Kind of bringing it back into a more compact application. There was a time I was with Scarlet, and we were um, petitioning Lucifuge Rofacale for this laundry list of things in a pact. And we went out to these, what were they called? The Sutro baths in San Francisco, these cliffs and on these ruins. Um I forget it was a specific astrological event going on with Saturn, but everything seemed like it was a conducive environment to actually go and form and engage this ritual. And I actually went through a process of making a blood sacrifice and calling Lucifuge, invoking him in what started as an evocation actually turned into an invocation and took residence within me while Scarlet, my wife, is in front of me and she's going through reading this pact of things that she wanted to negotiate. And there was a point where he started to laugh. And, she's waiting. She's like, well, why? What's up? Like, what's so funny? What's the deal here? And he was quick to point out to say, every one of these things you can have. There's the deal isn't the problem isn't that. They can all be given to you. They can all be made available for you. But you're not tempered to wield power on this level. And in fact, if I make that available to you now as you stand here before me, you will destroy yourself. And if you destroy yourself, you destroy any need that I have for you in any way that I see fit going forward. So it was interesting that it was a lesson to be learned that the power unlocks itself as you're ready for it. Uh, but it also has its own internal governing system of being just out of reach for those who are not ready to access it at that point in time. But it is accessible. And keeping that open minded, the potential of it can be had, it can be wielded, it can be gained. Things start to align to take you in that trajectory. As long as you complement it and you start working, you discipline yourself to meditate and reflect on what actually is that power. How can it be applied? What are the laws of which it functions by? Um, but all of these things really unlock progressively, and that really is reflective of the greater pyramidic temple of ascent as a whole. Um, and that's why even in working with different people, different peers in these arts that I consult with, it's all about building things from the ground up because you have to be developed, you have to be ready to be able to not only accept this power as it becomes available, but to be able to implement it successfully. And that's why working with certain spirits will just kind of bringing us even back to the beginning of this conversation. They will set things up for you to start to clear the path, for you to be able to um, negotiate those psychological obstacles and prepare yourself for that ascending success before you. And that only intensifies as you go up. Um, Even the four that I work with in Four Thrones, there are some heavy hitters. but I found that they are also they're more appropriate for getting momentum going. And once you can establish that trapezoidal fortress that constitutes the bottom of that pyramid, and you can solidify it, then you can start to incrementally move up with the intensity of the demonics that are above that uh, in that hierarchy. And you're going to need it. You're going to truly need it to really start to work with some of these other powerhouses successfully. If you haven't developed that foundation and you start skipping stairs and you start petitioning or opening gates to certain beings to come into your life, they will chew you the fuck up,
Mm-hmm.
spit you out, and it may not even be just that nice.
Mm-hmm.
And that really is the danger, in my opinion, of walking this path. If you're not prepared and you're not dedicated, and you come at it haphazardly or with a certain bravado that I'm just gonna fucking step up to anything, I can handle it. But you won't, and
Yeah,
they will chew
exactly.
your ass out, and
I
it will just
agree.
be a matter of time before you become another verifiable statistic.
Yep.
Um, most people who endeavor down this, the power is fleeting. Some people find some very, very amazing access points to it, but they don't have the discipline to temper that. And that's why it just progressively takes time. You can never beat the foundation and the basics. Always find proficiency, come back to it, revisit it, work your way up through those bottom foundational stones over and over, because you're always going to learn something new about that on its own. Just working through that. Then take what you can and just push it up one notch higher. But you'll find that as you keep doing that, the stairs never end. But you just have to only move at your own pace to be able to accommodate that, and apply it with true reality. And that comes into even reflective aspects of what Abaddon has told me on countless occasions, which is, you're right where you need to be. You're right where you're supposed to be. I can act that through meditation and be like, yeah, you're right. And you're also right in the fact that even though maybe I wish I was a little bit further or on a different level that would be desirable, I haven't had the experience. I haven't been able to temper myself to be able to apply that power
Hmm.
with success, with realism, with results.
Completely
And
agree.
then you
I
fall
mean,
back to it. He's like, that's why you're where you're at. He goes,
yeah.
don't worry about it as you're ready for it. Whether you make this a devoted discipline, if you make this a devoted discipline and you move forward, then you can still look at the mirror anytime and Abaddon will come behind you and say, you're right where you need to be. Or you could do nothing and you could be a piece of dog shit who never does another goddamn thing. And Abaddon will come back behind you again and say, you're right where you need to be.
Yeah. Well,
It's
I mean, I think
interesting.
one of the things that I like about the left hand path is that there's a certain air to it that feels like we don't just call on entities for power or gifts and things like that. I mean, we do, but that's not it. That's not the extent of it.
Sure.
It feels like when you call on, so for example, like when I call on Baphomet to regain balance, you know, it's not like shit just kind of starts happening. It does, but in a different way. It's almost like walking with me, right? It's kind of like that whole Norse pagan kind of concept that with the entities that we work with, that's the key thing. We work with them. They work with us. They don't work for us. We don't work for them. We're not messengers. We're not apostles. We work together in unity with the entities that we call upon to achieve the things that we set out to achieve. Right? We are not.
You nailed it.
We're not owned by them, and they're not owned by us. There's a mutual respect. Don't ever go in. My word of advice to anybody getting into this would be: don't go into this with this idea in your head that you're going to own a demon and it's going to work for you. That's the quickest way to get your shit fucked up.
Yeah, yeah, especially whatever that individual has, maybe the unfortunate um, experience of calling into the reality, particularly. Some are can be forgiving to a degree, others won't be so much. 100%, man. I could not agree more with you.
Yeah. So I think we should. I think left hand path is kind of ill named. We should kind of call it. I think we should call it like the left hand craft or something, because there's a lot of building that goes into this, man. There's a lot of work that goes into it.
I like that because also path seems to kind of insinuate that it's just one, when really you have to look at it as being this infinitely wide path with
Yep.
unfathomable spectrums of that path that are high and low and far and wide and everything in between. And yeah, there's that's gonna be a learning curve for a lot of people, and I'm sure it has been for those who come through the Christian approach
Yep.
to magic, to wanting to bring the blasting rod and command them before you to be subservient.
Yeah. No, not a good idea.
An interesting lesson. It's an interesting lesson.
It is. I am going to start calling it though. I'm going to start calling it the left hand craft, because it just path just doesn't seem. It sounds nice, but it doesn't. It's got that click, that ring to it, but it doesn't. It doesn't fit. Like, for me, it doesn't fit. Because I'm constantly learning. Like I bring all of you guys on, like everyone I've brought on here, to teach the audience, to teach myself, to learn about other people and the way that you guys do things, the way that you communicate with your entities, your deities, things like that, the way you call upon them, the way that you use them to make your life better, the experiences that you had, just to educate people, right? And when I sit there and I look at it and I think about it, it's building. It's you build on it, like the craft, right? The whole idea of the craft, the reason it's called the craft, is because it's something you need to work on, right? It's something that every day, every single day, you need to work on it. You need to build on it. You need to put it together. The same thing with this.
100%. 100%. Yeah, the craft is something that you constantly, progressively become, and that you define, and that you master progressively. And it's just that building proficiency in it. And I think craft is a much more appropriate um, term in many a context. Left hand craft on the left hand path, man. And it's beautiful, and I love it because I know it's romanticized, I think, by a lot of people, but it all comes down to it. There's not many that truly walk that path with the intention of sacrificing everything for ascension in that craft. And those that do, it's fucking salute you, because that is
Yep.
you put everything on the fucking anvil. It's all on the altar, and you're willing to fucking throw it all down to be able to create something from that. And it's the limitless path. It's where you have to take full responsibility for every step that you put in front of the other as an individual, better or for worse. And I couldn't think of anything that is more appropriate for myself, for who I am, for the nature of what I am, for the limitlessness that I aspire to. Um, this is it, and it's my passion, and I love, like you said, coming across other people that walk this and work this in different capacities, because the truth is nobody's the same. Everybody has such different experiences to bring to the grand table, and the most beautiful gift that we can get from anybody else that does that is to be able to sit around black campfire with them and say, dude, how's your journey been? Like, what have you encountered? What has fucked you up along your way to get here where you are? And what do you got?
Yep.
What do you got plans to be able to take it from here? What are your plans? What do you got? What do you got fucking prepared? What are you doing?
Yep.
And there's so much to be learned from other people's applications, other people's triumphs, and other people's failures. Um, it's been able to learn from even sometimes the failures are the most powerful things that teach us, because if you don't have that coherency to be able to see something for what it is on the surface and go, I'm not going to do that, or or if you can't learn from somebody else's fucked up experience, then you're doomed to fucking go through it yourself. And but sometimes that hard head been thrust in the mud and eaten shit fucking personally leaves an experience in that individual that just it's so intense. There's nothing else that will escalate over that, and it's usually been a huge turning point for that person's own ascension and what they're going for. So it's all about, I think, having experiences, and the more educated and that you can be about having these experiences moving forward, more powerful you're going to be.
All right. So that is going to be it for this evening. Nate, always a pleasure having you on, man. Chat, thank you for being here. Greatly appreciate it. On this wonderful Saturday evening in May. We're almost halfway through the year, fuckers. Halfway through the year.
God damn it.
All right.
Man, thank you both. It's been an awesome pleasure to join you tonight. It always is. And I hope you guys have a kick-ass week ahead of you.
Yeah, you too. We'll see. Chat. We'll see y'all guys next week. Hail thyself. Peace the fuck out. Bye.